So today I'm showcasing how I like the videos for this YouTube channel, also just for myself, so in the future I can look back on this video, figure out what I was doing at this moment in time, and really see like, okay, where was I, and have I been improving, or have I not been improving, where did I want to go at that moment in time. So we'll talk about the setups I have in place, but also the things I would like to upgrade and move towards, so to say. Yeah, in general, lighting is very subjective, of course. The things that I like, you may hate, but I'm uploading it more as like inspiration. So if you want some inspiration, or you're looking to upgrade your own lighting setup and can't really figure out what you're doing or how to start, then this video might be for you. In general, I'm only talking about the YouTube setup. I'm not talking about my commercial work, because my commercial work is, you know, pretty standard 3-point lighting setup. And with YouTube, I've already been able to create kind of a unique style for the channel. The way I've been able to do that is by creating custom setups like this talking head setup. It's a desk setup with a key light in the correct position, or like my preferred position, and the camera is always in this position, which sounds kind of boring, right? Like, why would you create a setup like that if you're so into lighting? The thing I really realized with creating YouTube videos is that the viewers are very sensitive to their time, of course. When you click on a YouTube video, you want to have some sort of indication of what kind of quality you're going to expect. But when people click on one of my videos, I feel that they somewhat expect this talking headshot to be there, this kind of quality. And that's why I've created these setups where, for example, the key light is the same and the camera position is the same, but I often play around with the background, right? I often create these different scenes where it still feels like, okay, this is the quality I was expecting, but it's a different video every time. In general, I don't feel there's a right and wrong within lighting. You'll definitely experience gaffers who have this very strong sensation of right and wrong. Like, you always have to motivate lighting and that kind of stuff. But if you don't know what motivated lighting is, that's like, because there's a window right there, you also like put the key light right here. And that's a psychological thing. Like, a lot of lighting is very psychological. The human brain subconsciously knows like, hey, this is logical. The light's coming from that direction, so this side of his face is also lit. If you put the key light on the other side of this setup, which I'll showcase in a little overlay here, it feels kind of strange. Is that bad? It depends on the video output that you're creating, right? If you want that to feel strange, if you want it to feel fake, then, you know, you've achieved that goal with this certain lighting technique. And is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's what you wanted. So I'll start with the overhead rig, as I feel that's in a really good position at the moment. I see a lot of overhead shots on YouTube, and I don't really like the look of them most of the time. I feel where a lot of people have difficulty with overhead rigs is that they're still viewing it as a table. They, you know, the entire camera angle changes, but they don't change the lighting situation with that. And one of the tricks I do with myself is by like viewing it as a 3D model and then flipping the entire setup over. So instead of it being a table, that is now your background, and it's a wall, for example. You know, you put a camera on that, you put a subject between there, and then you light it as if it's a corporate interview, for example. That really improves my overhead shots, because now you're not only putting a key light on it, but you're also putting rim lights on there, and perhaps lighting the background independently, so you have full control over the contrast that enters the scene, so to say. So in this case, we have, you know, a key light to the right side of the frame, two hair lights, which is kind of strange, but one on the top of the frame and one on the bottom. And these lights are often different colors, so you have this color contrast between the hands there, and this really helps with that background separation, so those hands really spring out from the background. But then also you have the Spotlight SE with the Amaran through and the C pointing at that background, coming from the direction of the key light, you know, kind of motivating that, and you have even more separation there between the background and your subject, while giving this entire scene quite an interesting look. I also have the studio plant right there, which is not like lighting in any sense, but in general it gives it some depth, where there's something in front of the camera lens, and then the subject, and then the background. So in general, I feel that one is in a really great position in terms of lighting, and I did build this overly extravagant overhead rig, the video for which you can check out up here somewhere, it will pop up. Yeah, the reason for doing that, building this overhead rig with like integrated audio and the computers down there as well, is because it's quite an important shot for the channel. in general, when you view that as a viewer, you somewhat step into my shoes. You're no longer the viewer in that sense, but you're actually the player. And that's a psychological trick which is very powerful and engaging for YouTube content. So in terms of the overhead rig as well, sometimes I completely scrap the key light, where I just use the Spotlight SE and the tube lights to light the subject. And I moved the Spotlight SE a little bit up, so it's not just lighting the background, but also the hands or the subject, let's say. I also did this in recent portrait shoot with a friend of mine, Elisa, who I put this rim across her eyes, and it's a very contrast heavy scene, but you really get to tell the story the way that you want to, right? It's kind of like game theory. So if you have a game and you have like a treasure chest somewhere and you want people to find that, you just put a light on that and make the rest really dark, right? So you can do that with lighting as well in videos, where if you want people to look at a certain item, let's say you want people to look at something in the background, you'd light that up instead of the subject in the foreground. But with this lighting, it's very awesome as well. You can use like a studio plant. It's just a plant from IKEA, basically. I put it on the Edelcoin Head 1, and then it's spinning on front of the Spotlight SE. This recreates this effect of it shining through a tree. And yeah, it gives this really awesome sensation where that light is kind of moving. So you can create like moonlight scenes and that kind of stuff. In general though, for YouTube, this doesn't seem to work. I have a couple channels where I test certain things. And one of the things I've noticed is that as soon as a shot is a little bit, or it seems a little bit underexposed or whatever, it never ends up in the suggested feed. So I don't know if that's the algorithm detecting like, hey, this is low quality content, or if it's like the people who, you know, are just not intrigued. And I don't think it's the algorithm that detects this or anything. But there is something going on to where every shot is lit in that sense. It doesn't seem to work, which is kind of a shame. You know, you do YouTube to do whatever you want, basically. And as soon as you get sponsors, you know, it turns into a second income. Your priorities kind of change, because you also have a responsibility to the sponsors to get a certain amount of views and get them the return on investment. Which is why I like to make videos like this, where they're not sponsored at all. So if you do want to support the channel and you're enjoying the video so far, definitely consider liking it or leaving a comment. Leaving a comment is the best way to help me. Sharing the video as well is really great. And subscribing to the channel if you enjoy this. So surprisingly, I have very little left to say about the talking head setup over here as well, because that is lit in a very similar way. The only difference really is that the key light is a little bit closer to the camera, so that you get this Rembrandt style, whereas with the overhead rig it was very much at like a 90-degree angle from the camera or from the subject, where you got a lot more shadows in the hands. This is a setup I built as a prototype. I would like to really upgrade it in the future, which I'm definitely going to do. Perhaps even with like a DMX panel in there, where you can control the lighting in the studio from that setup. It'd be really awesome. But this really helps me create the videos at a consistent quality, right? The camera is always in the position that I like it. The light is always in the position that I like it. I feel the key light could be moved a little bit further to the right. If you'd want this more like the style that Marquez Brownlee uses, you'd use like a panel light which is quite large, like something like this, like 120 by 60, and then put it just next to the camera. My key light is a little bit further this way, which results in a bit more contrast in my face. But I have been thinking about this, like removing the top monitor and replacing that with like a panel light, like a, you know, Godox no LED or something like that. Now at the moment the rim light is kind of coming from the window, the key light is motivating that window, so, and then we have a nice little pattern on the background which is in color contrast with the tube lights which are behind this wall over here. So if I grab my iPad, you can kind of see the tube light changing color. So I can also turn these off. And so here you have a lot more natural of a scene. I feel this could really work for YouTube as well, where it's a lot more personal. But I generally just like to mess around with lighting. And so that's why I have this very extravagant scene. So this is kind of what I'm talking about in the beginning of the video as well. I want to see, like, in a year from now, am I still interested in this? Or have I realized something new about what you as a viewer are interested in, or how that psychologically affects you? So in terms of B-roll for the channel, I'm not entirely happy where it's at right now. That's in general because of the quick upload time for YouTube. So I noticed that if I don't upload a video every week, like the channel slowly just dies. And so, you know, when you're building stuff, you don't have a lot of time to switch up the lighting and do it properly. Usually I just light up the scene and then do whatever I need to do within that scene. At the moment though, I have been experimenting with just shining the Spotlight SE with the Amaran 300C on the subject as kind of this representation of the sun shining over something. What I really enjoy looking at in light is where you have these moments where the sun kind of shines through a tree, for example, or shines through the window in the evening hours where it's golden hour, for example. And that's really what I try to recreate with the lighting. It's also a psychological thing where the videos I produce are mainly made to be relaxing. And so that's a very relaxing moment for a lot of people. You know, the day is over, you've survived, and you're just you're chilling, the sun is setting. And yeah, that's really the vibe I'm trying to create in these videos. Is it working? I'm not sure. Maybe you're a better judge of that. So in general, I'm really quite happy with where the lighting situation is at the moment. I'm sure that I'll look back on this a year from now and think like, oh, what a noob. But that's always the case. You're always learning, and you'll always look back on your prior work and see the flaws in it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. Like I see a lot of people who give up on, it sounds kind of cringe, but they give up on their dreams because they're not willing to sit through that cringe phase where it is very awkward to do things. Especially with YouTube, like the videos I'm uploading right now might be very awkward. But if you're not willing to sit through that, then I don't think it's going to happen for you. So don't be afraid to be laughed at, essentially. If I have some advice for you, if you're starting out a YouTube channel and you're looking at like, what kind of lights should I invest in? What's good to start out with? A lot of YouTubers will recommend COBs because you can also add modifiers to them. And that's okay, you know, COBs are great, that's how I started out as well. But I'd actually recommend you buy some tube lights, mainly for the creative freedom that it allows you to have. The tube lights often come with batteries in them. So the Godox tube lights last for about 2 hours on maximum power. You can put them in any position. They also afford very creative, like cinematic lighting. You can diffuse them a little bit with a reflector or whatever, like a diffusion sheet. And in general, those have been the biggest improvement to my channel as well. The Spotlight SE is also something to strive for. That is a really amazing tool. So yeah, choose well. If you have the choice between a camera and lighting equipment, I choose lighting equipment, even if you're filming on your phone or doing whatever. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm getting called by somebody, so leave a like, leave a sub, and hopefully see you in the next one.